I'll keep this introduction brief because Jesus Christ, look at the runtime. Throughout the past few weeks, I've been watching the first episode of every new anime as it aired, writing down my thoughts and blabbing them into a microphone. The following video is the sum total of my efforts. Mini reviews of the premieres of every new anime of summer 2025. Note that, with one major exception, I did not look at any sequel seasons because oh my god, look how many of those there are. The goal of each of these segments is to provide a brief synopsis and review of each premiere so as to provide you, dear viewer, with recommendations on each. My recommendations are based on whether I decide to continue with each show, put it on hold, or drop it. Timestamps in the description if you want to jump around. The conclusion sums up my favorites. Shows are organized in this video by release date. That all said, let's get to it. What happens when the happiest alien in the universe meets the most depressed kid on Earth? The answer is one of the best episodes of anime I have seen in a good long while. The basic premise of Takopii no Genzai, or Takopii's original sin, is that a little alien, the titular Takopii, sets out on a mission to spread happiness across the universe. Unfortunately, they happen to land on Earth, and the kid they grow attached to, Shizuka, happens to be the victim of some intense bullying. And I mean intense. What makes the show stand out is the extreme contrast in dispositions between its two leads, where the innocent, naive, happy-go-lucky Takopii always sees the best in everything and is always trying with unyielding resolve to make Shizuka smile. Shizuka herself has a default state that can be best described as barely hanging on, and gets tormented by her abusers so bad that she takes a length of a rope-like thing from Takopii and, well, let's just say she loses her breath for a bit. Yeah, the bullying scenes in this show can be so genuinely hard to watch, so visceral in their cruelty that I actively cringed. So let that all serve as a content warning. If any of that sounds like too much for you, you'll want to avoid this show. I don't get squeamish easily, but even I wrote, "Oh fuck," in all caps multiple times in my notes when watching this. But if that isn't terribly off-putting, then you should absolutely check this one out because goddamn, it is enthralling. Despite its two tones seemingly being polar opposites, somehow their combination works. The depths of despair the show can illustrate only make the moments of kindness and compassion all the sweeter. You want to see Shizuka make it out okay because the few moments she's able to smile in between all the torment are some of the sweetest moments you ever did see. The show's also great in the visual department, as I'm sure as a parent, you gotta love the contrast between the absolutely grungy art style that Shizuka lives in versus the simplistic, cutesy, cartoony art style of Takopii. That visual contrast perfectly complementing the tonal contrast between their personalities and outlooks. There's some excellent animation on display, with the highlights going to the bully character's increasing frustrations and her plans being foiled. Possibly the best moment of visual storytelling, though, which I want you to experience for yourself and so won't show here, is what I believe is possibly the absolute hardest match cut on the planet. You will know it when you see it. It's goddamn brutal, and watching it had me groaning and or cackling like an absolute sicko. In sum, Takopii's original sin absolutely knocked it out of the park with its beautiful, brutal opening episode, striking a careful balance of despair and hope, of torment and kindness, showing that no matter how bad things get, you can always keep trying to smile. I highly recommend checking it out, but only if you have the stomach for some intense, visceral violence. If any of that sounds too uncomfortable or like a trigger for you, steer clear. As for me, I'm going to keep watching this one. The release of Necronomico no Cosmic Horror Show was overshadowed by something that had nothing to do with the quality of the show itself. Upon release, the only English language subtitles, and those for other languages for that matter, that were available were the ones available on Crunchyroll, and those subtitles were horrendous! The English subs were riddled with obvious mistakes, and the German subs even left in text which made it clear that AI was used to make them. It was a shit show on a scale detail that would probably, funnily enough, send the main character of the show itself into a murderous rage. There's some speculation as to who's to blame for this. Apparently, Crunchyroll took a no AI stance earlier in the year and may have been contractually obligated to use whatever subtitles the production company or distributor gave them, but regardless, the fact that they published those subs on their platform for paying customers may reflect a lack of quality control on their end. They did end up fixing it a few days later, at which point Blue Sky user Mary compiled a list of differences between the old and new subs, and the differences are staggering. One can only wonder how shit was allowed to get this badly messed up. Wherever the blame falls for this fiasco, I hope policies are put in place such that we never have a repeat of this disaster. And moreover, I hope this unfortunate first impression doesn't sour the reputation of the show itself going forward, because Necronomico is actually worth watching. Necronomico follows Miko, a down-on-her-luck streamer with bills to pay, both for herself and for her comatose friend Mayu. Desperate, she accepts an invitation to a mysterious event for a big cash prize. After butting heads with a rival streamer, she and everyone who showed up are strapped into a fancy new VR machine, told they're just doing a simple playtest for this new tech. So they get code Lyoko'd, and as you might expect, things take a dark turn. First off, I really like Miko as a protagonist. When we first meet her, she's in hyperactive, loud anime girl mode, but as soon as the stream cuts off, she immediately crashes, mellowing her into someone more normal. Despite her butting heads with her rival streamer, she goes out of her way to help her when she senses that something's off. And at the end, the big reveals, plural, send her into a righteous fury. All of that provides her with welcome three-dimensionality and with clear goals. At first relatable, at the end hardcore, that you want to see her follow through on. A likable, three-dimensional protagonist with clear goals. Sometimes that's all you need. But this show also has more going for it than that, namely the whole getting code Lyoko'd gimmick. I have to say, I love that the 3D animation went with a unique art style. Instead of trying to emulate the 2D anime aesthetic, which has so often come off as stiff and awkward, the show opted for simpler, game avatar-like characters that allowed the animators to go all out. There's no still frames here. When these characters are on screen, movement is constant and fluid, which is exactly what these 3D characters needed. In other words, this show took advantage of the temporary switch in medium and animated the characters as best fit that new medium, and the result is fun animation you won't be seeing anywhere else this season. Granted, the 2D animation isn't much to write home about. It's serviceable, good in places, and that's it, but really that's just a nitpick. Otherwise, I had a great time with this show. I'm gonna keep watching it, and I recommend you do the same. Let's just hope the subs don't get slopified again. The thing about comedies is they have to be funny. But for every occasion that I got a smile out of Mattaku Saikin no Tantei to Kitara, or Detectives These Days Are Crazy, there were at least 2 or 3 more that found me actively annoyed. The premise of this show is that a washed-up detective suddenly finds himself saddled with a very energetic assistant, and that's it, that's the joke. Hyperactive high school girl versus out-of-touch stick in the mud. That was barely enough to sustain a single episode of anime. No way can that carry a whole 12-episode season. I've had trouble where shows with great comedic premises struggled to maintain the laughs over the course of a season when all they had was the one joke. No matter how good that one joke is, you need more than just it to sustain a whole season of television. Not only is the one joke here not good enough for a whole season, but this episode did nothing to instill any confidence that this show would have anything other than the one joke to keep things fresh. This show also ain't helped by the fact that the characters are extremely one note. The girl is loud, and that's it. That's not a personality. That's just grating. Her gimmick being that her clothes were a bag of holding was amusing, but that does nothing to help her characterization. And then the detective guy himself? He, and by extension the show itself, lost me right away, when the very first thing he does upon meeting the girl is leer at her body, which gave the camera a great excuse to leer at her body in turn, and then somehow that was all played for laughs? Sorry, but I've never found sexual harassment to be funny, let alone when the object of the joke and the camera is a minor, and I never will. absolutely fuck off with that. I'm not saying there's absolutely nothing of value to be found here. This episode did elicit a couple of genuine chuckles. It's not impossible to be amused by this show's antics, but man, those characters are so bland that I just can't make myself care. Dropping this one. Clevatess. Maju no o to akago to shikabane no yusha. Try saying that 5 times fast. I certainly didn't. For our purposes, simply Clevatess opens with a young hero, Alicia, on an expedition with her fellow heroes to drive out one of the 4 lords of dark beasts who rule over the monsters that have terrorized humanity. This story, though, isn't about humans overcoming evil. One after another, the heroes get bloodily massacred. Side note, but I was terribly amused when the guy who looks like he'd be the protagonist of any other fantasy anime slop was the first to get eviscerated. Anyway, Alicia's the last left standing and manages to get but a single blow in before getting killed herself. The Lord, Clevatess, then goes to wipe out the kingdom that sent the heroes to invade his territory. The king mocks him as a stupid beast and promptly has his head relieved from his shoulders for the trouble. Before Clevatess can set off on his quest to wipe out the rest of humanity, the dying crown princess beseeches him to save her son, and in so doing treats him with a respect the king refused to offer. Intrigued, Clevatess takes the child, and, realizing he has no idea how to raise human kids, revives Alicia and magically conscripts her into his service, much to her fury. But she can't let that royal babe fall victim to whatever the Lord's schemes may be, and so we arrive at the show's seeming status quo. The hero turned unwilling servant, the Beast Lord turned determined parent, and their matching goals of looking after the kid clashing with their mutual disdain for each other. If you were to accuse this show of being generic fantasy, I would be hard-pressed to argue against that point. But also, I kind of don't care, because execution is king, and this show is very well executed. From a writing perspective, there's some clever economic storytelling going on here. The king and crown princess each share but a single dialogue exchange with Clevatess, but their stark differences in attitude paint a portrait of a family divided, a division we never see but can cleanly infer. More importantly, that difference in attitude intrigues Clevatess enough to the point where he agrees to give humanity one last test via the child. After all, if 2 people so otherwise closely aligned can display such stark differences, one so warmongering while the other so selfless, might there be hope for this foolish race after all? Only one way to find out. Once the episode gets to it, the dynamic between Alicia and Clevatess is also compelling. Bitter and filled with contempt, yes, which is exactly what makes it fun. This show's not a comedy, but what amusement it does manage to elicit feels natural. Instead of over-the-top screaming and what have you, all of the understated comedic bits feel more naturally derived from the situations the characters have found themselves in, like this big scary beast lord having no idea what to do with a human baby. Everything is played straight, and it works. From a visual standpoint, this show's easy on the eyes. It's got film grain and a very faint camera shake, emulating a sort of classic filmic look. The action scenes are also well constructed, in contrast to the typical shonen fare of constantly slowing things down to explain every little detail. The action in this show is snappy, letting the cool action animation do all the talking. All in all, I quite enjoyed my time with the first episode of Clevatess. It's a nice-looking, well-executed show, and this first outing ended on a cliffhanger that left me genuinely intrigued, curious as to what happens next. Check it out if anything I said sparked your interest. Needless to say, I'm going to keep watching this one. God damn it, I said I was going to be harsh. I have to be. There's too many shows for me to try to keep up with every single one that catches my interest, but I can't help it. Over the course of its 2-episode premiere, Jigoku Sensei Nube did win me over. This show's actually a remake of a show from '96 that is itself an adaptation of a classic '90s manga, so I guess it's actually just a readaptation, not necessarily a remake. Whatever. Semantics. I don't know much about the source material, so I went into this with fresh eyes, and I liked what I saw. This show's all about its titular character, Meisuke Nueno, aka Nube, who takes up a job as a school teacher while moonlighting as an exorcist. And let me tell you, this man carries this show. By day, he's an absolute dork, which is to say the perfect teacher for all his kiddos. And by night, he's a noble badass, saving his kids when trouble arises because he's just that cool a dude. This guy knows his priorities. Priority 1, protect my kids. Priority 2, everything else. It's straightforward, yes, but honestly, for that attitude, he rules. When in the climactic fight of this first little story arc, he yells, honestly, fuck yeah. The supporting cast hasn't yet got a lot of time to shine, but what I've seen so far, I've liked. In particular, when the girl Kyoko rolled up to lend Nube an assist by taking a lead pipe and smashing in a window so they could operate a magnet crane, I was like, yeah, cool, you win. Please, continue. There's also some incredibly gnarly violence. One bit against a kid, which is so insanely bloody and over the top that some will find it off-putting, but as for me, I was once again grinning like an absolute sicko. Hang on, why do I keep enjoying violence against children? I think I need help. The show's animation quality is admittedly a bit all over the place. There's some great action animation, but there's also some clunkier bits here and there. I also can't speak to how well this works as an adaptation. From what I've read, it seems to have condensed some events, but from how tight the pacing was, I honestly would never have guessed. I've also seen complaints about a reduction in fan service. And I gotta be honest, I don't give a fuck. Basically, I had a fun time with this show. It's alright enough to look at, and Nube's such a well-realized character that I couldn't help but be charmed. I do recommend checking it out, and I will keep on watching it. There's not a whole lot to say about Ginga Tokkyuu Milky Subway yet, in terms of narrative substance, because the first episode was only 3.5 minutes long. Also, apparently this is the sequel to some original net animation from a few years back. Didn't know that. Watching that would probably have helped, but oh well. Anyway, although this episode didn't even fully establish the show's premise, it was fun enough, it looks great, and I loved the voice acting. It sounded somewhat naturalistic, both in tone and with characters constantly talking over each other. So yeah, with how short these episodes are, there's no harm in keeping up with this one. So that I shall do. Disgusting. Finally. Some bad fucking trash. I swear, if anyone tries to tell me that Clevatess is generic fantasy when we've got this shit airing at the same time, I'm going to have an aneurysm. Tsuyokute New Saga. That is a Japanese word, alright. Tsuyokute New Saga is, at its rare best, never more than vaguely competent, but is usually just dull. It's about a war of humans versus demons. Protagonist guy finally beats the Demon King after losing everything, then gets zapped back in time and has a chance to do it all over again, but this time, do it right. And that's pretty much it. I appreciate that the show tried to build intrigue by opening in media res, but the consequence of that choice is it fails to establish any sort of emotional core. We're made to watch a bunch of, at best, passable fantasy action fights happen, and given zero reason to care, which is kind of extremely important, because without that emotional center, even the coolest looking fights in the world just turn into visual noise, and these are not the coolest looking fights in the world. When the show does eventually circle around to giving this guy even a hint of a personality, it's too little too late. The show also falls flat on its face in its attempts at air quotes, comedy. It's the tired old trope of, oops, a guy accidentally groped a girl, and she reacted violently. Like, that's just so boring.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
There were exactly two things I liked. There's one comedic bit late in the episode, which is okay. The guy tells his mom, why does his mom look younger than him? Anyway, the guy tells his mom that, oops, he ate all the food, and she makes this face, which, yeah, okay. That's a funny face. The other thing is, earlier in the episode, there's this buff woman with abs. She only appears for like a few seconds, but she looked cool, I guess? Man, I'm really stretching to find compliments, huh? This show's boring, don't watch it. Dropped. I think Kamitsubaki-shi Kensetsuchuu, or Kamitsubaki City Under Construction, counts as a magical girl show, so I might be contractually obligated to finish it. I don't think I'll be doing that right away, though. Kamitsubaki City Under Construction opens with the main character, Kafu, watching as much of the city, including her parents, get Thanos snapped. Years later, she maintains a habit of singing to herself, which comes in great handy when it turns out that her singing makes her a witchling, with the power to expel monsters encroaching on the city, though she doesn't come into her powers fast enough to save her sister from getting gruesomely eviscerated. The boss of Kafu's magic assistant exposits some plot mechanics at her, then she wonders to her magic assistant whether they're doing the right thing, as the monsters were once people, and that's it. So the show is fine, but a little clumsy. Pacing's a tad off. There's a jarring cut to 7 years later at one point, then another jarring time jump without any visual indicator where she suddenly has a new roommate we've never seen before.
Oh my god, they were roommates.
Before finally closing on a conversation implying that much more has happened than we've actually seen, leaving the narrative feeling a little disjointed. On that front, I should note that this is labeled as Episode 0 and is part of a wider multimedia project. So maybe this was made with the idea in mind that you would already know some of this, but still, as a standalone episode of television, the plotting leaves something to be desired. We also don't get anything in the way of goals or motivation for Kafu, leaving her not the most compelling of protagonists. She's a nice enough person, so I like her, but if she's going to carry the show, she's going to need more. I will say though, I absolutely love her singing voice. That's probably the key benefit of this show stemming from a multimedia project. Her voice actor was hired years ago as a singer first, actor second. She and the rest of the main cast, who've yet to be introduced, all already have online presences as VTubers and have built substantial music careers, both individually and as part of the wider Kamitsubaki multimedia project. So if nothing else, you can trust that whenever this show shifts into music mode, it's going to sound nice. The last thing of note is the animation. It's mostly 3D and fine for what it is. Stiff in places, but otherwise mostly serviceable. I just wish the rest of the show looked as good as the ending does. An unrealistic wish, I know, but oh my god, look at this, it's gorgeous! So overall, this show is fine. For now, I'm going to put it on hold as I don't feel any compelling need to see what happens next, but I've got a strong suspicion I might return to this one day. There's several things I could bitch about regarding the first episode of Tsuihousha Shokudou e Youkoso, or Welcome to the Outcasts restaurant, but there's only one thing that matters. This show actually says that slavery is okay as long as you're nice about it. After getting fired from his RPG party, Dennis sets out to open a restaurant, and after realizing that he needs an extra hand, he sees a little girl getting sold as a slave, thinks to himself that this is an injustice, then buys her anyway. But don't worry, he's nice about it. See, he cleans her up and says she's free, so it's okay. Bitch, none of that is okay. She's not free, she's a child. She literally cannot function without someone looking after her. That person being the man who bought her. It does not matter that he internally thinks to himself that the practice is evil. By participating in it, by giving the slaver money, he validated the practice as normal, enabled its continued existence. What do you think the slaver is gonna do with that money? Retire? No, he's gonna go enslave more children. The only moral response to an evil institution is to do everything in your power to dismantle it. And by the internal logic of this narrative, Dennis, being a max-level adventurer, absolutely had the power to do so. And even if you buy his excuse of, oh, I can't fight every injustice, there's a huge difference between being unable to fight back against an evil system and actively participating in it. If this narrative wanted me to believe in Dennis as a morally upstanding protagonist, or even a morally complex one, someone who I would have been interested in following, then the only correct response from him would have been to stab the slaver through the heart. Instead, he quite willingly gave the slaver money, in so doing validating and perpetuating the existence of a morally evil institution. Fuck him, and fuck this vile show. Dropped. I cannot believe David Productions' first original anime is this lame. Onmyou Kaiten Rebirth features Truck-kun adding one more lame loser to his body count. Said loser drops into a Japanese retro future city that occasionally gets overtaken by black mist, its people transformed into crystals and smashed to bits by monsters. He falls right into a ceremony being held by the literal girl of his dreams, and also falls into her chest because of course he fucking does. But despite him completely ruining her day way and totally objectifying and infantilizing her with all his lame-ass talk about how he's going to protect her, she somehow forgives and takes a shine to him because he's the protagonist and she's the girl, so the plot demands they be together, and when he gets basically killed by a monster for rushing at it with no protection, for reference other people in this world use mech suits, it turns out he's fine because he has super protagonist powers, so he can beat it up no problem, and even when the girl gets smashed and he gets killed again, hey, no worries, he's also got time travel powers, he can just do it all again. Lame. The protagonist is lame.
俺は絶対負けねえんだ。あの化け物に一発ぶちかましたかったんだ。俺は負けねえんだ。
Any man who must say, I am the king, is no true king.
The girl is not allowed to be a character, just an object to be fawned over, and the protagonist's plot armor powers suck the tension out of everything. Giving the protagonist the ability to ignore any and all consequences that stem from his actions rob the narrative of any investment it might have otherwise built. If you were to open the dictionary and look for the term wish fulfillment bullshit, you'd find a picture of this show. Don't watch this. Dropped. Busu ni Hanataba o, or April Showers Bring May Flowers, follows Hanataba, a self-described background character who doesn't think she has a shot at romance. To her absolute horror, the cutest boy in class, Ueno, catches her trying to accessorize with a flower in her hair. She needs to swear him to silence lest people start to talk about her, but unfortunately for her, she's not just socially awkward, she's an introverted disaster, so it's only by the power of Ueno being the goodest boy, recognizing that she needs something and chasing her down to give her room to talk, that she's able to finally form words with her mouth. And through this persistence, hope finally blooms that maybe, just maybe, she can make a friend. I would be hard-pressed to say that this show is doing anything unique, but I also don't mind, because for what it is, it's very sweet. Hana being her introverted disaster self is nothing if not relatable, and just over the top enough to be amusing and endearing without being terribly painful. Ueno, as I said, is the goodest boy, who cannot help but charm with just a hint of a harder side. Their ability to completely misread the other, yet still come out the other end on good terms is a fun dynamic. And what it all ultimately boils down to is, I want to see what happens next. I want to see if Hana matures. I want to see if she's able to come out of her shell and develop meaningful relationships. This episode got me to care about its protagonist, and that's all it needed to do. Like I said, there's nothing terribly unique going on here, so this is going to be my lightest recommendation yet. Still, I enjoyed myself and want to see more. So, keep watching this, I will. If it sounds like your jam, it can't hurt to check it out. Mizu Zokusei no Mahoutsukai, or simply the Water Magician, follows Ryo, just some guy who got isekai'd and now wants to live a slow life in his new fantasy world. Throughout the first episode, he experiments with his water magic, builds up his fighting prowess, which ain't exactly slow, but whatever, and that's basically it. This show was chill, but not much else. Ryo doesn't have very much going on in the way of personality or goals beyond simply live, so by the end I can't say I was at all invested in him, nor do I care what happens next. The animation also got kinda janky in places, so this ain't a show to go to if you're looking for visual spectacle. But I'd also be lying if I said I was bored. Something about the chill vibe made it an easy 20-odd minutes to sit through. So there's worse ways to spend your time. I'm not in a hurry to find out what happens next, so I'm putting it on hold. But if you want an easy, chill fantasy show, maybe check this one out. There is only one thing that matters about Wataru-kun no XX ga Hokkai Sanzen, or Wataru-kun's asterisk, 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 is about to collapse. That one thing is that the main character gets sexually assaulted, then gets victim blamed for it, and then the narrative proceeds as if nothing happened. Sexual assault is no less serious just because the victim is a man, and the fact that the narrative treats it as a joke, as something he's just gotta get over and move past, is fucking disgusting. Don't watch this shit. Dropped. Silent Witch, Shinmoku no Majo no Kakishigoto, or Secrets of the Silent Witch, is about the titular Silent Witch, Monica, one of the land's 7 great mages. She earned that ability by developing the ability to cast spells without speaking, without incantations, something no other human can do. And she did this because she had such crippling social anxiety that she wasn't able to speak the incantations to begin with. Now, Thanks to her unassuming exterior, much to her dismay, she's been called upon for an infiltration mission by fellow mages whose ears are deaf to her protests, and partnered up with a girl whose life she once saved and so now worships her, much to her bewilderment. It would be fair to say that not a lot happened in this first episode. It mostly served to lay the groundwork for the wider story ahead, but let me tell you, that's some solid groundwork right there. Monica herself is a fun protagonist. Her introverted nature leads to a lot of exaggerated and amusing reactions when she's forced to interact with extroverts. If she was just that, you might accuse her of being shallow, but thankfully she's not. She's also hyper competent at what she does, and I just love the juxtaposition between the serenity and grace she displays while she's at work versus the nervous wreck energy she exudes when having to talk with another person. I also like the dynamic that's been set up with her partner on the spy mission, a girl who idolizes her for saving her life, and as such is super enthusiastic about her role of being Monica's bully at the school they have to infiltrate. The juxtaposition between her genuine adoration and the hate she's very enthusiastic about having to fake is fun. It's fun. I can't wait to see more of it. I also have to heap praise on the storytelling structure of this episode, how it first sets up an exciting moment, then waits and provides some much needed context before jumping back and fully getting into that moment. If the episode had started on pure spectacle, it would have just been noise, but because it set up the spectacle, then made us wait while it established all the necessary plot and character beats, once it finally circled back to the action, it was able to hit with all of the emotional catharsis that could possibly have been wrung out of it. In other words, it's a show that rewards you for sticking around, one that knows how to create and deliver on meaningful setups and payoffs. It's also gorgeous to look at. The thin line work and light colors make for a generally pleasant viewing experience, and when the action finally does kick in, the sheer spectacle and fluidity of the animation on display is unrivaled. Safe to say I'm going to keep watching this one. Silent Witch comes with my easy recommendation. 9 Ruler's Crown is a void of entertainment. It is where fun goes to die. This show is a PG-13 adaptation of a porn game where a guy who can only be described as protagonist is surrounded by a bunch of over-designed love interests who have about as much depth as you would assume based on that description. It's amazing how this show managed to end on an ostensibly exciting cliffhanger, yet I have zero interest in finding out what happens next. There's only 2 things of note about this show. One is that it wastes the first 3 full minutes of its runtime on a show within a show, a baffling creative choice as it does nothing to set the stage for the actual show, either in terms of plot or characterization, coming off as a complete waste of time. On that note, the general pacing is so bad that the actual plot of the show only kicks in 20 minutes into the 23-minute episode. The only other interesting thing about the show has nothing to do with its actual quality. This show is unlicensed, so the only subs available were some garbage machine translated ones. If you're looking for accurate translations, you're in for a disappointment, but given how boring this show otherwise was, the garbage subs were actually the most entertaining part. My favorite bit was when this girl's name, Sora, was somehow translated as Tony. If ever I have reason to interact with this property ever again, that is who she shall be to me. That's fucking Tony.
There's the fucking money. Oh, nobody knows what the fuck I'm talking about. And what you people are kicking up to him is a fucking disgrace.
Anyway, this show's dull as dishwater. Don't watch it. Dropped.
Frankly, I'm depressed and ashamed.
Fermat no Ryouri, or Fermat's Cuisine, follows Gaku, a brilliant student who just let his dream of being a mathematician slip through his fingers. He tries to force a smile, but on the inside he's despondent, not sure what he's going to do with his life. While working at his school's kitchen to raise some money in lieu of the scholarship he's now lost, a freaky deaky man, Kai, happens to wander by and gets obsessed with his cooking, and so ropes Gaku into working for him. It's shows like this that make me wonder if my standards are too low, because I struggle to identify anything special about this show, but god damn it, I was into it. Gaku's a straightforward but compelling protagonist, just a guy who lost his way and just might have found something new. Kai's just the right amount of freaky where I'm like, alright, what's your deal, man? There's some decent comedic bits with Gaku's pal Ayu, and god damn it, that cliffhanger! The ultimate question when it comes to whether I continue with the shows is, do I want to find out what happens next? With the cliffhanger this episode ended on, the answer to that question is an emphatic So yes, I'm going to keep watching this one. It has my recommendation. Check it out if you want to see a guy use math and cooking to one-up an evil school principal. Zutaboro Reijou wa ane no moto konyokusha ni dekai sareru, aka betrothed to my sister's ex, follows Marie, the second daughter of a declining noble house who suffers no end of abuse at the hands of her parents. She flees an enchanting encounter with a young noble, Kairos, believing herself unworthy thanks to said abuse. The only affectionate relationship she has is with her sister. Said sister receives a marriage proposal from Kairos, then dies in an accident on the way. So, Marie gets sent in her place, and despite Kairos's kindly overtures, she can't let herself believe she's worthy of him. I had a couple problems with this first episode. First, I fundamentally did not buy into the premise. Marie constantly repeats to herself that she's ugly and unseemly and what have you, but it's hard to take that seriously coming from the most gorgeous person you've ever seen. "I'm too tall," she says, as she looks up at the man of her dreams. On the page, the story makes sense, even if it's fairly standard. The abused, self-loathing girl learning to love herself. It's just the story being told by the script and the story being told by the visuals do not necessarily agree. The script also fumbled what could have been the most emotionally impactful moment. We spend one scene building Marie's warm, loving relationship with her sister, and then immediately after learn, in narration, that she's dead, and we sweep past that revelation so fast that Marie isn't given any time to mourn. Her sister's death, had it been a fully fleshed out scene or two, could have been the defining event of the narrative, the moment that really helped us buy into Marie as the protagonist by getting us on her side. Instead, it's breezed past so fast that I was left feeling emotionally disconnected from everything. That all being said, this wasn't a bad show. The visuals were pleasant, and the ending gave me hope that there was more thought put into the narrative beyond all a girl needs to be pretty is some makeup. Still, enough disappointed me about this episode that I don't feel a pressing need to continue. There's a good chance it's going to get better, but for now, it's going on hold. Kaoru hana wa rin to saku, or The Fragrant Flower Blooms with Dignity, is about Rintaro, a gruff-looking high schooler whose mere appearance has always scared people away, causing him no end of quiet heartache. He also helps out at his family's patisserie, and it's there that one day he meets Kaoruko, who, rather than be scared by him, actually appears quite smitten. On the way home, she gets jumped by delinquents, then saved by Rintaro, presumably sparking a heartwarming romance. Okay, look, I know I'm going to get in trouble for this one, but please hear me out. By most measures, this is a well-crafted show. Rin, a protagonist with a lot of depth who should be able to carry a heartwarming narrative. But two scenes really bugged me, scenes which reflect an underlying mindset that I find alienating. First, there's the scene where two girls stick their noses up at the boys for the crime of being boys, reflecting an attitude that men and women are fundamentally different creatures who must be kept apart. Second is the scene where Rin rescues Kaoru from being assaulted, which, in the absence of counterexamples, criticism, or reflection within the narrative, reads as the narrative reinforcing outdated stereotypes that girls are weak and demure and men are meant to be their strong saviors. Taken together, these two scenes reflect that the larger narrative is seemingly steeped in a gender essentialist mindset, one where men and women are confined to playing specific narrow roles, and I personally find no appeal in that. Let me be absolutely clear. I'm not saying that there's no inherent value in narratives where characters inhabit traditional roles, nor that nothing meaningful can be gleaned from such narratives. I'm not even saying it's invalid to enjoy these stories when that stuff's played completely straight. If you like that, power to you. I'm saying that I, personally, cannot derive any enjoyment from this. For all I know, the things I don't jive with will be addressed later down the line, but for now, I'm gonna drop this. Ryouri no Hoseki, or Ryouri Rocks, follows Ryouri, a spoiled little brat who gets obsessed with crystals, begs her mom for money so she can go buy some, then, when that fails, sets off into the mountains to dig up some of her own, runs into a graduate student named Nagi who happens to be studying mineralogy, and ends up sticking with her and learning all sorts of things about that field of study. In other words, it's a cute girls doing edutainment show, and I think it perfectly accomplished what it set out to do. I now know a whole lot more about the processes that form crystals and the movements of rocks across millennia than I ever thought I would, and I was entertained all the while. This show's greatest strength is in its animation. The team behind this went all out into injecting all the childlike energy they could into Ryui's antics, so it was hard not to have fun. That being said, I do have a couple of worries. Ryouri was amusing, but her petulant attitude does border on grating, and I imagine for some it's already too much out of the gate. If she doesn't mellow out over the course of the show, she could quickly go from cute to just annoying. I'm also not confident that the status quo the first episode has established won't get dull over the course of a season. It was perfectly fine for one episode, but edutainment shows like these that rely too heavily on their status quo without iterating have gotten stale on me before. See Season 3 of Yuru Camp. For those reasons, I'm not going to continue with this show for now, but to be clear, of the shows I've put on hold, this is the best one so far. I could see coming back to this and being just as easily entertained as I was with this episode. It's just that, for the moment, I don't feel a pressing need to see any more. This first episode was fun enough, and I'm content to leave it at that. I will say though, if you want a chill show featuring cute girls learning and teaching about rocks, you'll probably have a great time with this. Busamen Gachi Fighter, or, Ugly Mug Epic Fighter, follows Shigeru, a self-described ugly man who gets wrongfully convicted of a crime he didn't commit, then gets a chance to get isekai'd, and sets his appearance value to as low as it can go, so he'll get a bunch of bonus stat points, making him functionally a god in his new world. This is a show I would describe as ugly, but not for Shigeru's appearance. Also, the fact that this show equates being overweight with ugliness is certainly a choice. Rather, his and the wider narrative's attitudes are ugly, making this a deeply unpleasant experience. His whole woe is me, the world hates me because I'm ugly, therefore I'm going to be bitter about everything act just doesn't make for a compelling protagonist. This is also a narrative completely uninterested in having stakes or exploring the consequences of the character's actions, in so doing squandering opportunities for drama and character growth. Initially, when setting up his character, Shigeru hits himself with a load of debuffs to get a bunch of bonus stat points, but fails to allocate those bonus points before getting isekai'd, leaving him with just the debuffs. This could potentially have been the start of an interesting arc, a bitter man intentionally hurting himself to try to game the system, only to have the system not reward him for his antics, forcing him to live with the choices he's made and grow into a better person. Instead, after just a minute of realizing he never allocated those bonus points, he's allowed to fix that mistake, and the rest of it is just bullshit power fantasy. No consequences to his actions, he just gets everything he ever wanted and learns nothing. Also, what's very telling about this show's priorities is when it shows that boys who get isekai'd to this world get a shirt and briefs, but girls get nothing but skimpy underwear. So, bleh. I got exactly one bit of amusement out of this episode, where the RPG party went to a restaurant that was simply named Hamburger.
Hamburger.
Other than that, this episode was deeply unpleasant. Dropped. Hotel Inhumans is about two concierges at the titular hotel, Ikuro and Sara, who cater to the every wish of their clientele. Said clientele? Assassins all. For this first outing, they help their client get revenge on the man who betrayed him in hopes of saving his hostage sister. I think this show has potential. That setup indicates that it's structured as an anthology, with its main duo poised to serve as vehicles to learn about whatever crazy characters come through their doors this week. The immediate comparison that comes to mind is Death Parade, but without the supernatural bend or the emotional through line of a single client sticking around through the weekly stories. The episode did enough to define Ikuro and Sara as distinct personalities with their own specialties on the job, him the brains, her the brawn, but with how much runtime this episode devoted to simply setting up the weekly story, I'm worried that the show is going to struggle striking a balance between sufficiently exploring the recurring characters versus the weekly stories, namely that it'll have too little of the former. And regardless of that balance, the weekly stories are going to have to pull a lot of weight. And based on the first episode, I'm not confident they're up to the task, as the story this week was just fine. Guy gets betrayed, guy wants revenge, guy gets revenge. It's extremely straightforward, and I can't say the episode's attempts at pulling the heartstrings landed. Still, I see the potential in the setup. If this show can improve on its weekly stories and flesh out its main duo, and give us some more Sara kicking ass. Side note, the one action scene of Sara dancing around the goons and just styling on them was the highlight of the episode, exciting and well animated. If the show can do more of that, I can see it becoming something really cool. For now though, based on this first episode just being fine, I'm gonna put it on hold. Game Center Shoujo to Ibunka Koryu, or Cultural Exchange with a Game Center Girl, follows Renji, an employee at a game center who happens upon a British girl, Lily, failing at a crane game. He helps her out, shows her around, eventually she gets better and returns the favor. In the end, they start exchanging a notebook so they can more easily communicate, starting a cute friendship, and maybe something more. Though hopefully not something more. This is, first and foremost, a romantic comedy, but while I was watching, I have to admit, something felt off. Romance just didn't feel right for this story. The element of culture shock, of two people with a language barrier learning to communicate and forming a bond in that shared experience, is in and of itself a compelling narrative. Adding romance on top felt like an unnecessary extra layer of complication. And as it turns out, I was right. She's 13 and he's 18. So, ew? Let's not do that, please. If it wasn't for the extraneous romance, this show would be easy to recommend. It's easy to look at with a clean pastel color palette, it's got some good comedy, and it's overall cute. I was even pleasantly surprised that the actor they got for Lily is a native English speaker. A good thing, as if they just went with the standard anime route of hiring a non-English speaker to try their best at English. Lily as a character would have fallen flat on her face. Just about everything in this show is cute and fun. It's just a shame that an awkward age gap romance had to be shoehorned in there. Maybe the narrative is smarter than I'm giving it credit for and will eventually handle that element in a mature way. But for now, I'm putting it on hold. Gachiakuta takes place in a society that reviles trash to a religious degree. Trash is guarded by armed men who will kill you if you try to steal it before it gets thrown in the pit. This is also a heavily stratified society, with a spotless upper class that dresses in pristine whites and golds, and a dirty lower class forced to live in grime, all supposedly criminals or the descendants thereof. One such descendant is Rudo, who makes a living stealing and fixing up trash. Even his own people hate him. He's the son of a murderer, so he's no good too, right? When his surrogate dad gets killed in front of him, that reputation catches up with him, and he's thrown in the pit. Without anyone bothering to hear him out. Even his best friend Chiwa turns her back on him. Let me acknowledge first that this show is immaculately produced. It's a Bones production, so no shocker there. The grungy art style, the sakuga, the music and sound design, from a production standpoint, there's nothing to complain about. But for reasons I struggle to articulate, I just didn't vibe with it. I could make minor complaints about clunky exposition or how Chiwa's heel turn didn't feel narratively justified, but those would just be nitpicks. There's something deeper here that just ain't clicking. The best I can figure from this first impression is that the narrative is steeped in cynicism. Here we've got a society defined by its loathing of things they see as ugly or lesser. We've got numerous key characters who immediately assume the worst without considering alternatives, reflecting their society's pervasive cynical mindset. Cynicism, that's the name of the game, the core motivator underlying everything in this narrative, and that's just not pleasant to engage with. I'm not saying any of that makes this a bad show. There are plenty of directions this narrative could take to turn that cynicism into something meaningful. I don't doubt that this story will do exciting things and find sparks of hope in its dark foundation, but the prospect of engaging further with this narrative, holding out hope for that hope, does not excite me. I personally do not need that degree of cynicism in my life right now. That just sounds exhausting. I need things more joyful, more hopeful. So I'm going to be putting this one on hold, but let me be clear, this is a well-produced show, so if all of what I said doesn't bother you and you're itching for some shonen action animated by those who do it best, you'll probably really like this one. Don't let me detract from your fun. If it sounds like your jam, go for it. Hikaru ga Shinda Natsu, or The Summer Hikaru Died, is about two best friends, two very close friends, You know, close friends in the historical sense. These are Yoshiki and Hikaru, except, as the title suggests, that's not Hikaru. Hikaru's dead, and something has taken his form, his memories. But Yoshiki can't stand the thought of life without Hikaru, and so makes new Hikaru swear to never leave him again. And so life continues with them together, but outsiders on the hunt and a mysterious force haunting the town may disrupt their peace. I must admit, this show had me completely enthralled. Everything about this first episode was phenomenal, and I hardly know where to start. Can we talk about how it just needed a few minutes to make me cry? We get but a handful of flashback scenes from Yoshiki's point of view, showing Hikaru teasing him and making him laugh, after which we hard cut to Yoshiki curled up in bed, quietly bawling his heart out, and goddammit, now I'm crying. The writing at play is unimpeachable. This show knows how to make you care about its characters with just a few lines of dialogue. The overall presentation too is absolutely stunning. The whole show is blanketed in this gorgeous washed out color palette that, along with the harsh lighting, both serve to ground the show in its harsh summer setting. You almost break out in sweat just looking at it. The audio design too is perfect. There's a lot of quiet ambiance, the distant chirps of cicadas handily transporting you to this quiet, rural Japanese village. Together, the visual and audio presentation create a peaceful yet haunting vibe, perfect for the quiet tragedy of Yoshiki mourning his friend while still choosing to live with this new version of him. But make no mistake, this show isn't completely dreary. It does have some levity. Both versions of Hikaru are quite funny. This both helps alleviate some of the tension, making the show not a complete downer to watch, and makes the tragedy hit that much harder because, damn it, you just can't help but like the guy. I think my favorite visual gag is when new Hikaru is having this overblown reaction to food he's never had before, speed lines and all, and then we cut to a wide shot and the speed lines are still behind him. That got me. Overall, I think we've got a strong contender for Anime of the Year on our hands. It's a poignant narrative about love and loss that hits you right in the feels, with an immaculate presentation that sets a quiet, somber atmosphere like no other. Needless to say, I highly recommend this one, for even in the darkness, there is light. Kojo Denka no Kate Kyoshi, or Private Tutor to the Duke's Daughter, is about a young man who fails his mage exam, then takes a job as a magic tutor for, you guessed it, a duke's daughter. And that's pretty much it. I gotta be honest, folks, I did not feel a single emotion watching this thing. It's just one of those shows with a personalityless self-insert protagonist who constantly has cute girls falling into his arms. There's nothing of substance here, and for the life of me, I cannot force myself to expend any more mental energy on this show, aside from what it already took to write and narrate this blurb. Dropped. Bad Girl is about Yu, a good girl who starts crushing so hard on her senpai Mizutori Atori that she puts on the guise of a bad girl just to get her attention. Unfortunately, she's too good a person, so aside from the looks, she's bad at being a bad girl, but that's okay, because her attempts get Atori's attention anyway. Also, Yu's best friend Suzu is there to tease her and maybe get jealous at Atori for taking all of Yu's attention, so there's a bit of a love triangle situation going on here, but for the most part, this is wacky fun hijinks. I feel like this is going to be Exhibit A in the case of Tyranno Has Low Standards, but damn it, I enjoyed this one. It was just pure, uncomplicated fun. Cute characters with distinct personalities bouncing off of each other in amusing ways. I had a smile on my face throughout the whole thing and got a few good chuckles out of it, and what more do you need from your comedies? I loved that Yu's attempts at being bad were, at worst, mild inconveniences, and that when the chips are down, her good girl instincts win out. Try to disguise her good girl intents as she might with her faux bad girl attitude, and that it's that combination of her good actions and poor attempts at putting a bad spin on it that ultimately catch her crush's attention. So, you know, task failed successfully. In the writing department, this is cute and wholesome. This isn't terribly important, but it's also fun that every character's name is alliterative. Yu, Suzukaze Suzu, Mizutori Atori, Ruri Hararura, Mizutori Mizuka, Komari Maria. That's fun. To be clear, I don't think there's anything deep going on here. This is far from the most impressive production we've seen so far. But fresh off the emotional void that was Private Tutor, this was exactly what I needed to lift my spirits. So for doing a good job at making me chuckle, this show earned a spot on my watch list. Check it out if you want some uncomplicated like fun. Isekai, for fuck's sake, with this long-ass title, I am not saying all that. Anyway, this show's about a guy, Takuto, who gets isekai'd into his favorite game, which is basically fantasy civilization. There, he meets with his favorite civ's leader, Ato, who somehow remembers all the games he's played with her despite her being a fictional character. Neither have any idea where they are or how they got there, but they're ecstatic to meet each other in person, and so resolve to carry on like it's just another game by building their evil civilization. Based on that description, this probably sounds like generic isekai slop, but I gotta be honest, I didn't hate it. In fact, I was entertained. In particular, the dynamic between Takuto and Ato was surprisingly wholesome. Don't get me wrong, the idea of your favorite game character coming to life and being all over you is definitely wish fulfillment nonsense. But for what it was, their relationship kinda worked. Rather than a domineering master-servant relationship, they quickly formed a more equal, warm partnership where they both prop up and support the other and aren't afraid to voice their minds. They also had fun banter, with Ato in particular being portrayed with an expressiveness that helped sell her as a fun, dynamic character. I also enjoyed the premise of them role-playing as the world's bad guys while, in private, we see them acting nothing but sweet, even a little embarrassed at taking on some evil affectations. In particular, it was very amusing to watch these dark elves genuflect before an entity they only perceive as an evil dark shadow, but the whole time we're aware that that's just a nice guy, so the juxtaposition between how he's perceived and how we know he acts and how we imagine he's actually acting right now is fun. I had fun. That being said, I have no pressing desire to continue with this show right now. Not because it did anything wrong, but because I've already added too many shows to my watch list and I can't keep up with everything. I'm putting my foot down. I have to be harsher. Still, this was a good enough time that there's a good chance that I'll return to it someday. So I'm putting it on hold, and I recommend checking it out if anything I said sparked your interest. Ame to Kimi to, or With You in the Rain, is about a woman, Fuji, who one day finds some abandoned pet and takes it home. The show's about the slow life, following these two as they go about their days. There's one word to describe this show: chill. The light, orchestral soundtrack, the lingering quiet moments, everything about this show's presentation combines to create a calm, chill atmosphere that's easy to melt into. You don't go into this show for drama. You go to it to relax and smile. Nothing's here to put you on edge. Everything is perfectly calibrated to make sure you have a nice, easy time. There's plenty of laughs to be had, especially with the recurring gag of the pet's cue cards, and Fuji's so warm and disposition that it's hard not to like her. Really, there's nothing about this show to dislike. If you want a nice, relaxed way to kill 22 minutes, then this is the perfect show for you. It's low on my priority list, but I am going to keep watching it. Food Court de Mata Ashita, or See You Tomorrow at the Food Court, is about two loners, the prim and proper Wada and the gyaru Yamamoto, who secretly meet up at their local food court every day and talk. There they both let their real personalities loose. Wada, the loud, kinda rude gossiper, and Yamamoto, the calm intellectual, and the series finds its heart in their clashing personalities coming together in casual friendship. There's not a whole lot to say about this show. It really is just those two sitting there and talking about a whole lot of nothing. Their conversations are amusing, and I like their dynamic, but there's nothing beyond that. There were moments that made me chuckle, like when Wada was driven up the wall by the drivel of a conversation two people were having behind her, but nothing that makes me itch for more. Still, this show was perfectly competent. It accomplished what it set out to do, and I was never bored. It's a chill show without anything to complain about. I'm gonna put it on hold, but if I ever need to just relax, and I've finished up my other relaxing shows like the very previous one, I can see myself returning to this one. Do you really need me to tell you that you should watch City the Animation? It's basically more Nichijou. Same animation studio as Nichijou, adapting another work from the same mangaka as Nichijou. It's got a lot of the same energy, both bold colors and line work, and absolutely insane animation for what would otherwise be the most mundane of gags, elevating said gags into something truly special. I had a smile on my face for most of the episode and got a couple of good gut-busting laughs out of it. Yes, watch this show, as I shall continue to do. Binankoko Chikyu Boebu Haikara, or Cute High Earth Defense Club Haikara, is a magical boy show set in the Taisho era, and that's basically all I've got in terms of synopsis. I wanted to like this one. It's a spin-off of another magical boy show that aired a full 10 years ago, which I watched 3 episodes of back when it was new, and thought was okay, if nothing special. And in terms of production quality, there's nothing to complain about here. In the world of anime, there's a severe imbalance between the sheer quantity of gratuitous nudity forced onto female characters versus male characters, so with a near 7-minute bath scene and some steamy transformation sequences, this shows a step in the right direction of balancing that equation. But unfortunately, this episode falls flat in the writing department. Despite having just watched it, I have no idea who any of these characters are. We're thrust right into their group dynamic without being given time to get acquainted with any of them individually. As such, they all blend into one cute, hot blob. Sorry to say, but thanks to that, I can't recommend this one. Dropped. Deki no Mogura, or the Earthbound Mole, is about 2 literature students who run into a ghost dude who can't move on and bemoans the restrained life he has to live. And that's pretty much it. This episode was extremely dull. The script did nothing to make me care about any of the characters, and the art style, while unique, was not something I enjoyed looking at. If I'm digging for compliments, I guess I can say I appreciate the unique coloring and shading on display when they're in the ghost realm, and I like that the main duo aren't being forced into a romantic partnership. I like it when male and female protagonists can just spend time together being friends. That doesn't happen often enough. But that's about all I can see in this show's favor. It's really got nothing going on that makes me want to see more. Dropped. 私が恋人ななれるわけないじゃん。無理無理、無理じゃなかった. Or, there's no freaking way I'll be your lover. Unless is about Renako, who completely reinvents herself for high school. Sick and tired of being the lonely geek, she forces herself to be more outgoing and lands herself in a group of popular girls. After a comedic mishap, she ends up confiding to the queen of the school, Mai, about her insecurities, about the effort she has to put in to keep up this new persona. Mai, in turn, confides in her the strain it takes to be the rich princess everyone expects her to be, the emotional toll it takes, how isolating it can feel. And so the two form a kinship of those who can only be their true selves around each other. But while Renako's happy to have made a friend, Mai wants more. She's never had someone she can be honest with like that, and falls for Renako hard, much to Renako's bewilderment. Now the two friends are at odds. Mai wants to date Renako, but Renako's afraid of complicating her new high school life. So the two settle on a bet. They'll have friend days and girlfriend days, and it's up to each to convince the other that their path is better. And so the status quo is set. Mai's to try her damnedest to woo her love, while Renako tries to convince her, and herself, that friendship is where it's at. Sorry to give the game away early here, but this show's fucking based! Everything about this first episode rules. We've got strong characterization, incredible visuals, sheer fun, energy. God, I hardly know where to start. This show is peak from the cold open, with bright colors and energetic animation to match the sheer frantic energy coming from Renako's internal monologue. I mean, just look at how good this looks. Look at it! It's so pretty! I love Renako and Mai both individually and as a couple. Renako's introvert masking as an extrovert persona is personally relatable and the foundation for numerous fun hijinks. The earnestness with which Mai approaches everything is endlessly endearing. I love that the foundation of their relationship is in honesty, in showing their true selves to the other and only being more into each other as a result. In other words, it's love formed from acceptance of the partner's whole self, not their internal images thereof. I love that Mai only continues to fall harder for Renako the more her honest self loudly comes out, and I love that Mai's earnest love for Renako is slowly pushing her to be kinder about herself. I love that Mai's persistence brings so much fun energy out of Renako. It's a story about seeing and bringing out the best in your partner, as Mai does to Renako, and about learning to embrace every single part of yourself, including your own eccentricities, as Renako slowly starts to do thanks to her relationships with Mai and everyone else in the group. God, I just love this story, and it's all accentuated by sublime performances from some perfectly cast voice actors who absolutely nail their roles, and a visual presentation that's bright and energetic with animation that perfectly encapsulates the show's frantic comedic tone when it needs to. The characters all animated with such expressiveness, god, it's all just so good. It's here that I must confess that I went into this episode a tad biased. I've already read and enjoyed the first 4 volumes of the light novels, so I knew, if handled right, this would at least be fun. But given what happened to the last anime adaptation of a Youkoso story with artwork by Eku Takeshima, I was apprehensive, to say the least. Thankfully, this is not a Whisper situation. Not only did this first episode do the source material justice, but I honestly think it surpassed it, giving me a new appreciation for the story. I now care a whole lot more about Mai than I did just reading the books, and the high quality of this adaptation so far has me looking forward to how they handle the rest of the story. If they can maintain this level of quality through the end of Volume 4, this is going to be the most based show on the planet, because while this setup may seem pretty straightforward so far, I promise you, you do not know where this is going. When I got to the end of Volume 4, I was hyped to all hell, kicking and screaming in frantic delight. If this show gets there at this level of quality, it's going to be peak. This story does get a little trashy here and there, but god damn it, this episode exceeded all expectations. Gorgeous to look at, and not just faithful to, but elevating the source material. Frankly, it was perfect. I'm stunned beyond belief, and honestly couldn't be happier. We've got another Anime of the Year contender on our hands, and needless to say, this show has my highest recommendation. Fuck, I think I might have to make a full video deep diving into this show and how it succeeds as an adaptation. It's just so good. Let me know if you'd want to see that. Night of the Living Cat is exactly what it says on the tin. A zombie show, except the zombies are cats. If one touches you, you turn into one. The first half of the episode follows 2 survivors, Kunagi and Kaoru, fresh off of losing a friend as they run away from a horde. The second half flashes back to show how this catpocalypse started. This show is honestly better than you might expect based on that description. I appreciate that the inherently silly premise is played completely straight. No one's eye-rolling or making ironic remarks about how stupid this all is. They're taking it seriously, thus enabling us viewers to stretch our suspension of disbelief just a little further than we might have otherwise. I liked the dark shading, which both helped sell the grim atmosphere and harkened back to a sort of retro anime aesthetic. I also thought there were decent moments of characterization. In particular, I was grabbed by this moment where Kaoru fully socked a panicking Kunagi in the face to try to straighten him out. This isn't a demure girl delivering a light slap because she's frustrated or upset. This is a hardened survivor taking the fastest path she knows to snap her partner back into reality before they both bite the dust. So, that was neat. Also, this show was apparently co-directed by Takashi Miike, which, given how rarely that otherwise prolific director dips his toes into anime compared to his veritable library of live-action work, makes it a fun novelty, if nothing else. Alas, despite all that, I'm sorry to report that this show isn't really worth watching. It's got some issues which, if recurring, would make for a frustrating viewing experience. The cold open undercuts the tension and fear it tries to establish by making the characters freeze when previously they were frantically fleeing. Yet the horde they were fleeing from is closer than ever, so they should still be running. If the show isn't treating the threat seriously, why should I? Next, the pacing gets undercut when, after the OP, some narration cuts in explaining what this apocalypse is, narration which is totally redundant, as the cold open did enough to show us what the apocalypse was. Finally, the pacing grinds to a halt when, halfway through the episode, we get a flashback that takes up the rest of the episode, and seems poised to continue into the next, showing how Kunagi and Kaoru met in the before times and letting us witness the start of the catpocalypse through their eyes. After already opening in media res, this extended flashback just killed any intrigue the first half had built. Any and all character information this segment communicated could have been better portrayed in the narrative present. As such, I don't trust that this show will present a compelling narrative going forward. I'm going to drop it, but if the sheer novelty of this show has piqued your interest, I won't tell you not to check it out, because if nothing else, the absolute absurdity of the premise is amusing. The first episode of Turkey threw me for a loop like no other premiere this season. The bulk of it is a very straightforward, competent sports drama. Mai is the captain of her school's bowling team. After losing the latest tournament, one of her teammates, Rina, vents her frustrations, chides everyone else for not taking it seriously. Mai just wants everyone to have fun, but Rina wants to win, and wants to win so bad she quits the team. Mai, though, doesn't want to lose Rina, and so chases her down. They end up in a bowling duel to decide their future, with Mai needing to prove to Rina that she's serious. And just as she goes to throw her last ball, let's hold that thought. I want to discuss first how, up until the end, this is a perfectly competent sports drama. I like how the bulk of the episode is centered on a conflict between Mai and Rina. This conflict drives the narrative and helps establish and develop the personalities and motivations of its two key players. Mai is characterized as competent but at first generally relaxed, prioritizing fun over everything, but this conflict reveals in her a strong determination. She's not just a happy-go-lucky anime girl, she's a strong leader willing to do what it takes to keep the team together. This is best illustrated in a moment of unique animation. Mai, changing into her bowling shoes, is suddenly rendered with bold outlines, highlighting this moment as the one where her determination comes out in full force. Rina, being the instigator of the conflict, at first comes off as rude and petty as she dissects the faults of each of her teammates. But her willingness to engage in the duel, her being the one to suggest it in the first place, shows that she still does care about Mai, about the team, despite all of her projections. Rina still wants to take the game seriously, to win, and while hers and Mai's goals are seemingly opposed, both can be met if they find a way to compromise. Through this duel, they're on their way to finding that compromise. This is best illustrated by the split. At the start of the episode, Rina bemoans how getting splits has somehow become a pattern for Mai, and accuses her of intentionally self-sabotaging, saying she's trying not to win. The split happens again during the duel. Almost convinced Mai is mocking her, Rina storms off, but because she left her shoes behind, you can tell something about Mai has gotten through to her. She doesn't want to give up, not yet, even if only subconsciously. So, she goes back, ostensibly to retrieve her shoes, as Mai readies to take her shot at the split. So far, this is a pretty straightforward sports drama. Two otherwise friendly characters with opposing ideals coming into conflict and settling it in a duel. All of this is perfectly competent, with that conflict acting as the narrative driving force that keeps you engaged and develops the characters. And if the show kept following that narrative through to the end, it would have been perfectly satisfactory. But then, just as Mai goes to throw her last ball, outside in the thunderstorm, lightning strikes some object, Mai's ball starts glowing and floating, everyone, including Rina, grabs onto Mai to try to ground her, and then they wake up in the middle of a battle in the Warring States period! What the fuck? Suddenly, at the very last minute, right out of nowhere, this straightforward sports drama has turned into a time travel show. I no longer have any idea what is happening, but goddammit, I have to know! Yes, this twist is out of left field, but I'll be damned if it didn't do its job of grabbing me hook, line, and sinker. I'm willing to buy into it because this is still serving to establish the show's premise, as this is still the first episode, and it's adding a unique spin to a narrative that might have otherwise been generic. You bet your ass I'm going to keep watching this. Kizu darake seijo yori hofuku o komete, or With Vengeance, Sincerely, Your Broken Saintess, is about Lua, one of a number of priestesses who have the power to heal injuries. Except, her power is a little different. She has to take someone's wounds onto herself before she can heal them. This earned her the moniker of Broken Priestess, and the ridicule, somehow, of almost everyone around her. Everyone except for her best friend, Ariane. One day her crush, a handsome knight commander, gets wheeled in with almost fatal injuries. Lua heals him, passes out from the wounds, then wakes up from a coma to find that Ariane has taken credit for healing not just the commander, but all of Lua's patients. Everyone now hates her, including her crush, and Lua gives in to darkness.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
So let's get the obvious out of the way. This show does not look good. Rather than traditional animation, it's using for the life of me, I cannot remember what this style of animation is called, so let's just call it motion comic animation. Single illustrations transformed around the frame like it's some kind of PowerPoint. It's just not visually engaging. So little is in motion that calling it animation feels like a misnomer. If you're going to put so little effort into adapting this story into a new medium, why even bother? As it is, if this story interests you, you're better off just reading the source material. That being said though, I can't exactly recommend the story itself. On a base level, I don't find any personal appeal in this sort of narrative. The one where no one believes the main character and they're cast to their lowest low, that just doesn't do it for me. But beyond that, even if I were into that sort of story, the internal logic of this specific narrative does not track. You're telling me Lua's quirk of needing to take another's injuries into her own body is a known factor in this setting, so well known that she's the source of widespread gossip, yet when she falls into a coma from severe injuries after the commander is fully healed from those exact same injuries, no one stops to think for even a second she might have had something to do with that? This narrative needed to lay a more solid foundation before it tried to pull that trick. As it stands, I just don't believe it. Dropped. Mikado no san shimai wa angai choroi, or Dealing with Mikadono's sisters is a breeze, is about Yu, the son of a famous actress whose lineage comes with high expectations. Expectations which he constantly fails to meet. He disappoints everyone around him with how untalented he is, including his prestigious school's 3 royals, sisters who are each extremely talented in their own fields. After making his poor first impression on them and following from the passing of his mom, he goes to move into the home of a friend of his mother's, and surprise, the 3 royals are the daughters of that friend. He's living with them now. Harem hijinks ensue. So, this is a well-made show, easy on the eyes with cool character designs and even bits of lively animation here and there. From a production standpoint, there's nothing to complain about. I would even go so far as to say this first episode does a decent job in terms of characterization, with each of the sisters and even Yu himself coming out with distinct personalities. I even, on paper at least, kind of like Yu's rather innocent goal of just making a happy family life for them all. I like that he's firmly in the support role while each of the women in his life are allowed to shine on their own. I should like this. But, I don't know, man, something feels off. I'm getting bad vibes, and I can't put my finger on exactly why. Best I can figure, this is a similar problem as with the Game Center show. The added element of romance doesn't feel like it fits with the foundation this story has built. Yu's story of having drifted apart from his mother, only to reconnect in her dying days over their shared love for family, thus sparking in him a desire to create a happy home life, which in turn drives him to want to create a warm home environment for his new family, would itself be a solid story. Adding on top of that, all 3 sisters apparently falling for him at the exact same time feels like an unnecessary complication. It risks undermining that solid foundation. I don't know, man, I don't trust it. I'll put it on hold. Maybe I'm worrying about nothing, but I've got too many shows on my plate. I'm not gonna take a risk when the vibes are this off. The exception to my sequel rule had to be this, because how could I not at least mention the return of panty and stocking with garter belt? Finally, after 15 whole ass years of waiting, we have a resolution to the most infamous cliffhanger in anime. It's every bit as insane as you would expect, and we've only got more insanity ahead. So yes, Trigger's back and they knocked it out of the park. This episode captures that same cartoony, vulgar energy of old and just does it more. It was fun from start to end. Shout out to the random woman getting some grow big juice and socking her would-be attacker in the face. So if you already like panty and stocking, this is shaping up to be the perfect sequel. So this isn't a mini review of this show, which you should watch if you like the original and only if you've already seen the original. Rather, this is a warning, because part of what made the original panty and stocking so iconic in the Western fandom was its pitch-perfect dub. The voice actors all understood the assignment and nailed their performances, and the translation was slick, loose in places but true to the spirit of the show, with original bits that only make sense in and enhance the experience of watching the show in English. But for this new season, the dub cast has been entirely replaced, and the translation, while accurate, isn't as free to take the appropriate liberties as the original, so some of the spirit is lost. This isn't a knock against the new cast, who are doing the best with the material they're given, just be warned. Stick with the Japanese audio for this one. Leviathan is a bit of a unique case. It's a Netflix original, which means it was batch released. It's all already out. As usual, for this video, I just watched the first episode. Also of note is that it's adapted from a Western YA novel of the same name, and based on the credits, it appears to be a bit of a multinational production. So there's a bit of a convergence of storytelling sensibilities going on here, which, if nothing else, makes for a unique viewing experience. Leviathan is set in an alternate history version of World War I, where the Central Powers, Germany et al., use mechs, and the Triple Entente, Britain et al., use genetically engineered beasts. The story follows two point-of-view characters, Prince Alec of Austria-Hungary, whose parents have just been assassinated, leaving him the sole heir to the throne and the target of some powers within his own nation's alliance, and Darren, a girl who disguises herself as a boy to enlist in the British Air Force. Alec's got an affinity for piloting mechs, and Darren's got a love of flying. And that's basically all we get from this first episode, but I have to admit, I'm intrigued. Darren's a fun character, her bravery is laudable, and the enthusiasm with which she approaches everything makes her endearing. Alec's got a big heart, and his being thrust into a life or death situation and still refusing to take a life does a decent job of making him sympathetic. You at least want to see this kid make it out okay. The 3D animation even works. It's a Studio Orange production, so no surprise there. Yeah, there's nothing terribly unique about this show as of the first episode, but it did just enough to get me curious about where it goes. This might be my weakest recommendation of the video, but I am, in fact, going to recommend it. If nothing else, this show did give us some new Joe Hisaishi music, so as far as I'm concerned, its existence is justified. Tougen Anki is about Shiki, a guy who doesn't know he has Oni blood in his veins, which comes as a big shock when a descendant of the Oni hunter Momotaro comes to murder him. His adopted dad tries to spirit him away to safety and explains the whole mess, reveals that he too once fought Oni as a Momotaro descendant, then tries to fight off the hunter himself. That goes poorly, which awakens Shiki's Oni powers. And then his dad dies in his arms, with the very end teasing he's about to be recruited to a group of Oni. This first episode was fine. It's got some decently rendered action choreography, so if you want an uncomplicated shonen romp, you could do a lot worse than this. That being said, I can't say I'm interested in what happens next. The narrative was as straightforward as uncooked pasta. No surprises here, no real intrigue to reel you in. Everything happens exactly as you would expect. Characterization is thin, little more than functional. To the show's credit, I did feel the barest hint of an emotion when Shiki was crying over his dad's body, but that's it. Nothing else in this episode made me care about him. Going forward, I expect there'll be plenty of perfectly competent action, but I need more than that. Pick it up if it looks cool to you, but as for me, I'm content to leave this one behind. Dropped. Guys, hear me out. What if Yuru Camp, right? What if Yuru Camp, but straight? Even that description, though, is giving Futari Solo Camp, or Solo Camping for Two, way too much credit, because the first episode was miserable. It's about a guy who goes solo camping and has his time and space intruded upon by an obnoxious young woman. He spends the whole episode with his internal monologue going on about how much he hates her, and she spends the whole time being whiny, pushy, entitled. There is literally nothing here to like. They are both miserable characters.
こいつは自分勝手にも程がある。俺の一番苦手なタイプの女。
二人ソロキャンプ認めてくれるまで帰らんけんね。ダメです。
は？行かねえ。
ダメです。
行かねえって。
ダメ。
行かねえ。
Bonus negative points. Their introduction is him walking in on her changing and staring directly into her underwear, which is a great excuse for the camera to do the same. Just fuck all of this. My recommendation for this show is watch Yuru Camp. I know I did a slight dig at season 3 earlier, but the bulk of the show is great, and even the worst of Yuru Camp is better than the best of this garbage. Needless to say, dropped. I'm not even going to attempt reading the title of this one. The short English title is Scooped Up by an S-Rank Adventurer. This show is about a boy who gets picked up by an eccentric mage after a big battle with a big bad went terribly wrong. She trains him as a white mage, then he leaves the nest and joins an adventuring party. Thanks to him, the party gets famous, but he wounds the hero's delicate ego, so he fires the guy so he can keep all the women in the party to himself. Then the protagonist gets recruited by this pink-haired girl desperate for a white mage, and the episode ends there. The front half is somewhat amusing, thanks to the protagonist's master being a personality. He'll try to do some little magic, and she'll all sarcastically be like, wow, great job, then absolutely humiliate him with her own prowess.
All I wanna do is see you turn into a giant woman, a giant woman.
Not exactly an ethical way to raise a kid, but it makes for amusing cartoon antics. Sadly, it's all downhill once the kid sets off on his own. His master failed to raise him to have anything in the way of a personality, so I found myself unable to care about anything he does or what happens to him. On the production side, this show looks fine in stills, but it's never exciting in motion, so if you go into this looking for action, you're going to be disappointed. Really, I can't think of a reason to keep watching this one. Dropped. Tsuihousha to Ansatsu Hime, or The Shy Hero and the Assassin Princesses, is about the hero who somehow gets surrounded by women in his RPG party, except, here's the twist, all three of them are trying to kill him. An amusing premise that could work, but sadly the execution leaves something to be desired. I came out of this episode wishing they had actually succeeded in killing the guy. The best part of this show was just these three bouncing off of each other, at first being antagonistic, then forming unlikely friendships. I genuinely just wanted to watch them hanging out, shooting shit, and maybe going on quests together, but unfortunately, this guy is still here, and he's the worst part of every scene he's in. The only unique personality trait he's got going for him is that he's shy. So shy that a woman merely touching him makes him pass out, which is something, I guess? But aside from that, the only thing he's got going on in his head is protect women, which is, lame. Doubly so because that's also somehow endearing to the women who are tasked with killing him? The thing that annoyed me most about this whole setup was that each of the women had ample opportunity and motive to kill this guy, but just didn't. And the justifications for not slitting this man's throat were paper thin. And the more they didn't kill him, the more annoyed I got. Please, do a misandry, I beg of you. The words that come out of my mouth sometimes. In short, the hero guy overstayed his welcome. He should have exited stage left as soon as he served the function of bringing these wacky characters together. As long as he continues to be central to the narrative, and in all likelihood becomes an object of romantic interest for all of them, I will continue to not give a single shit. To be clear, this show isn't worthless. The three women are well characterized, and I actually came to really like the sniper assassin when she put her job on hold to save a kid from being sold into slavery. It's just a shame the hero guy has to stick around and literally actually steal scenes from the characters I care about. Dropped. Bullet Bullet is about Gear, a young man living in a city that's seemingly humanity's last refuge in a desolate world. He's got a reputation as a crack thief, and dreams of getting away and seeing the outside world beyond the horizon. One day, a woman hires him to steal back a family treasure that some big bad businessman stole from her, and with no end of trouble along the way, Gear and his crew pull off the heist, and are left wondering just who that woman was and what her real deal is. This first episode was, to my surprise, pretty alright. It's got some decent action animation, so if you're looking for some excitement, this show will do just fine. I also came to like Gear by the end. He's caring for his ailing, argumentative father figure, and despite how much that man grinds his gears, Gear is passionate in making sure he's okay, showing that he's got a good heart. He himself can, taking after his dad, be argumentative in fun ways, and he's got a clear goal: see what's out there. Between all of that, I'd say he makes for a solid protagonist. I don't mind the prospect of seeing what he gets up to for 12 episodes. That being said, I feel no pressing need to continue with this show. It's not that this show did anything wrong, per se. Okay, well, actually, the polar bear guy, there's a talking polar bear, by the way, the polar bear kind of sucks. Could have done without him. but that's just a nitpick. I'm just feeling a disconnect between Gear's goals and the plot he's been dropped into. Here's a kid dreaming of escape to parts unknown, but the plot is him going on an unrelated adventure some other character dropped in his lap, and I struggle to see how the latter can possibly inform the former. That doesn't make it a bad story, it just makes it thematically and emotionally incohesive, thus making it hard to get truly invested. So I'm gonna put it on hold, but I will say, of all the shonen or shonen adjacent action adventure shows I've put on hold, I'm more likely to return to this one than any of the others. So if you're looking for a decent action show, you might actually want to check this out. Finally, that's everything. In sum, this is a damn good season for anime. I've picked up 15 shows, which is maybe too much, but hey, that's my problem. If you're a normal person and don't have time for that many shows, my picks for best of the season are Takopi's Original Sin, Silent Witch, The Summer Hikaru Died, and There's No Freaking Way I'll Be Your Lover Unless. If you pick up anything from this season, let it be one of those. Before we sign off, can I tell you something? I'm kind of an idiot. When I suggested doing this video in a community post, I truly did not realize how much work I was making for myself. I was remembering the last time I did one of these and thinking this would be like 50 minutes max. But this season had 15-ish more shows than last time's, and I'm sorry, I couldn't help myself from scripting everything instead of going unscripted, so this turned into a much bigger project than I anticipated. All I had to do was fucking look at how many shows there were. The whole problem could have been avoided, but no, I posted before I thought. Let that be a lesson. Do not post things before thinking them through. Still, I got it all done, and now I'm left wondering, was the effort worth it? Did this project coalesce into something useful or at least entertaining? You tell me. If you think I should make seasonal anime videos a regular thing, let me know, especially in terms of if there's anything you think I should improve upon or do differently. In the meantime, if you care to stick around, the next video on the docket's been drafted and is set to be even longer than this one. What the fuck am I doing with my life? It's a deep dive into a cult classic anime trilogy, and I'm really excited to share it when it's done. I hope you'll look forward to it. Until then, thanks for watching. I'll catch you in that next one.